have this conversation. And can we just have a show of hands? If you own or work for a business in downtown, can you raise your hand? Okay. If you own a property in downtown Santa Monica or anywhere, can you raise your hand? Okay. And then if you're a downtown resident, there's a few. Okay. And then concerned citizen. There we go. Okay. So we have a nice mix of folks here, but a good downtown representation. So thank you again for coming. So why are we here? Homelessness in the city of Santa Monica and all over Los Angeles, the region, there are experts here who can talk at great length about that, is up. And if you've been in town for more than 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, if you think 20 years ago, our problems were pretty much the same. The number of people that we had on the streets was very high, and we're seeing a resurgence of that, and it's upsetting for all of us. It's upsetting for the folks who are on the street, of course. It's upsetting for those of us who deal with antisocial behavior, or behaviors that come hand in hand with being homeless, not having facilities, not having room for a place for one's things. And so it is a problem that we are all facing, we are all sharing together. So the purpose of this meeting is to really talk about what is happening. We realized that in our conversations with some of the property owners over the last several months, that there was a real lack of understanding of the extent of the services and the programs that are available not only here in Santa Monica, and Santa Monica has always been a leader in this issue, but in the county and statewide, not so much on a national level, but you know we're working on that as well. So we wanted to give you that information so that you could find places to plug in where you see an issue that affects you personally or you see someone that needs help. So we're going to be talking about this issue from a variety of different perspectives. And we have here today, I don't want to miss anybody, we have police and fire here, we have human services here, we have the city's Office of Communication, the city manager's office. So there's a lot of folks here that will be able to talk with you about anything that's on your mind as it relates to homelessness. So I just wanted to introduce, I'm going to introduce Patty in a second, but I wanted to again thank you for being here. This is meant to be an open forum. I do want to tell you that it is being, I don't think taped is any longer the right word. That's a very old word. There's no tape, right? Streamed, thank you. Ask the librarian and she knows. So don't say anything your mother would be embarrassed to hear you say, okay? Because the fact of the matter is that this is our community. We treat each other with a lot of respect and respect from each person's perspective. So we appreciate you doing that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you. Our librarian.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the main library. My name is Patty Wong. I'm the Director of Library Services, and I wanted to introduce my assistant city librarian, Erica Koyugan. Can you just stand and wave? So welcome. And if you're new here, we welcome you, and please get a library card if you're here. We want every one of our community members to have a library card, and there's actually a lot of program information at the front door that we would like you to check out as you come by. Our mission at the library is to provide resources, services, and a place to encourage the community to read, connect, relax, and learn. That means our services are for everyone. But everyone, for the most part, behaves well, but some do not. Just like you, we want to be a good neighbor in our downtown community and in our environment. So I wanted to give you a couple of ideas of what we've done in the last year to work with our community. We've taken a hard look at our behavior rules and are now spending dedicated time enforcing them. We've added 2 library service officers to provide a stronger presence in and around the library perimeter to enforce the rules and to have a stronger impact on safety and security. We are working with a caseworker from the People Concerned to interact with individuals who are experiencing homelessness to provide information and access to services. And we're in the middle of recruiting for a social worker as well. We are working with the Department of Mental Health to provide training to staff and provide outreach in the building to all of those who need services, including all of you who might need some support or ideas and suggestions. We're working with all of our departments, but especially Santa Monica Police Department, the Fire Department, Human Services, and nonprofits to coordinate all of these services. And we are working actively with our homeless, actually, who frequent the library to take better care of themselves and their neighbor. In fact, I think a lot of them would like to develop a coalition. For those who violate our code of conduct, we have developed several steps to from deterrence to banning to stay away orders. So we look forward to the conversation today, and we really thank you for coming. So thank you. Kathleen, are you going to come back up? Oh, Elisa, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty. Good morning. My name is Elisa Adunya. I am the Senior Advisor on Homelessness, a new position within the City Manager's Office. And today I just want to kind of help set the context for the presentations that you're going to hear. Last March of 2017, voters across LA County passed Measure H. That is a quarter-cent sales tax anticipated to generate $355 million over the next 10 years, specifically for homeless services, finally getting the resources that are needed. This funding will address 21 strategies in 8 focus areas, and those include prevention, expansion of rapid rehousing, which is just a short-term rental subsidy. Some of you, if you're property owners or landlords, we hope that you'll participate in that program. Interim and bridge housing, what we used to call emergency shelter. This is more temporary housing to help someone transition and move off the street. What's significant is we're now targeting people as they exit foster care, also as they exit the jail so they don't end up on the street, as well as those that are unsheltered, having a safe place for them to reside until we can connect them to permanent housing. You'll hear a little bit later, outreach is more than increased 4 times over, really getting sophisticated. We now have what's called multidisciplinary teams. So it's not just about going outside with a bottle of water and connecting, saying, hi, how are you doing today? It's a public health nurse, a licensed social worker, someone in behavioral health and substance abuse, someone with lived experience. So we're almost doing street medicine and case management on the street to really engage people. We also are doing much more regional coordination. I know one question is, well, how do you know someone's not being serviced in Hollywood and bouncing to Santa Monica and then to South LA? There's now a real coordinated effort so that we can do coordinated care. Also enhancing, again, the bridge housing and really focusing on our youth. If we can address youth that are experiencing homelessness, we can prevent them from becoming adults also experiencing homelessness. And not sure if any heard the counts last Thursday. So those that participate in the homeless count here in Santa Monica last January, you know that over that same week, people across LA County were going out to count. Those numbers were just revealed, and for the first time in 4 years, homelessness has actually gone down. In the city of Los Angeles, 3%, in the city of Los Angeles, 5%, in the county of LA, 3%. And what's most significant is that 16,000 people were housed. That's huge. That's about 4,000 more people than the year before. But I know the question is, really? Because I still see people experiencing homelessness on our streets, impacting our business. Why do I see that? One of the significant trends is that more people are now experiencing unsheltered homelessness. If you drive through the city of LA on your way to work here in Santa Monica, you see the tents. In Santa Monica, it could be people sleeping in doorways or living in cars or in other areas that are outside. Countywide, 75% of the population is unsheltered. That means close to 40,000 people, or 3 in 4 people are unsheltered. Who are some of the demographics? So this comes from survey. It's not accurate. I'm sure we can always survey more people, and everyone has their own experience. So these are just generalizations to give you a profile. 27% of people self-reported serious mental illness, so depression or schizophrenia or bipolar. 15% report a substance use disorder. Maybe they're using, it could be self-medicating with methamphetamine or marijuana or a combination or Oxycontin, et cetera. 10% report both substance abuse and serious mental illness. That could be a little bit higher because oftentimes, just given our broken medical and mental health system, people do self-medicate without recognizing, sometimes using alcohol as well. 80% of households are single adults. That doesn't mean they're not part of a family. It just means they're experiencing homelessness alone. Their kids could be in custody, they could be separated from their family, et cetera, or maybe a recent death. One thing that we are really concerned about is 22% of people age 62 and older, or people age 62 and older that are experiencing homelessness increased by 22%. So that means people are aging out on our streets, and we need to look at those interventions. This is a huge question that people ask. Is everyone just moving to Los Angeles? Actually, 75 people experiencing homelessness lived in LA before they became homeless. 65% lived in LA 20 years or more before they became homeless. So these are our families, our daughters, our sisters, cousins, former school teachers, etc. In Santa Monica, how do we compare? So we did see a slight increase, as Kathleen mentioned, by 4%. But 4% up, 3 to 5% down is still within a margin of error. When I look at these numbers, what I see is we're stabilizing. We're not seeing that huge shift that we saw last year, where homelessness went up 26% in Santa Monica, 23% in the city of LA. Something's working, and I think it's the public investment and more coordination across the region. Just quick snapshot, we too see majority in the 25 to 54 age range, majority male. We are slightly higher for veterans. 10% of our residents experiencing homelessness are veterans. 68% are unsheltered. The average length of stay, we again skew a little bit different. We're seeing people in their first 5 years of homelessness. New to Santa Monica, about 27% have been here a month or later. 48% are from the county. And this statistic always, I think, challenges people, that people say, well, is it because of the expo line? Well, in our short demographic study, 52% actually report taking the bus, not the expo line. What are we doing locally to address this regional crisis? And I think we have to keep that in perspective, that Santa Monica, we're not an island unto ourselves. We're both impacted on receiving people experiencing homelessness, and we're impacted in how do we help connect them to services. Your city is investing close to $5 million in local solutions. We have close to 400 emergency or interim housing beds, 300 units of supportive housing. So this is dedicated housing that's affordable with services on site. Santa Monica is one of the leaders in the region and the nation for being able to develop this housing, mainly through Step Up on Seconds program. We have 4 dedicated multidisciplinary teams. Again, those teams with the public health nurse and substance abuse counselor, which also was innovated here in Santa Monica with People Concerned, formerly OPCC. And we have many place-based strategies that are addressing hotspots, including downtown and our beach, through multiple partners from West Coast Care, if anyone knows Ron Hooks and his son, St. Joseph's Center, Safe Place for Youth, and again, OPCC. And finally, as we move forward through this crisis, we have 3 priorities. Our one, particularly looking at how many people are at risk as they age to either falling into homelessness or are, is prevent house Santa Monicans from becoming homeless. We need to coordinate care for persons living with untreated mental illness and substance abuse so that we can increase public safety for all. And then finally, we must build our regional capacity, meaning working with Culver City, Beverly Hills, Brentwood, Palisades, Venice, et cetera, to build regional capacity to house persons experiencing homelessness and to prevent chronic homelessness. Again, intervene early so we prevent the long-term costs. I'm happy to answer questions later, but now it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you our city's new police chief, Chief Cynthia Renaud.
Good morning, everyone. So I think I have about 3 minutes, and then question and answers in a panel format will be a little bit later. So I just want to take my 3 minutes to say hello and introduce myself briefly. 27 years in this profession. I'm very happy to be here in the wonderful community of Santa Monica. Looking forward to working with and serving all of you. As the Santa Monica Police Department moves forward, we have 3 outcomes that we are working to achieve. Crime, be part of the solution to positively impact homelessness, and mobility issues in the city, particularly Vision Zero, which is moving towards 0 fatalities and 0 major injury traffic collisions here in the city. So those are our priorities moving forward. With that, I think all of you guys know the Santa Monica Police Department pretty well. Would that be true? Yeah. Great group of people. I have my team here with me. As I was telling Kathleen, I think I'm rolling into week number 3 here. And I'm going to answer every question that I possibly can. And I'm also going to rely on my experts who are here with me to talk about some of the details about what we do to be part of the solution to this very vexing social issue that we face. And that is probably 3 minutes. And I would like to introduce our Fire Chief, Bill Walker.
Thank you. So the fire department runs about 17,000 individual calls for service every year. And of that, about 15% are homeless related. So at least 2,500 individual calls for service that end up being a homeless related call. The fire department is built, to stay available and to show up for critical emergency type calls. So the engagement that we really need to be doing when we encounter some of the homeless patients is a challenge for us. So we're trying to get better, get more educated, and looking at different ways to engage. We've tried a couple pilot programs. We had a low acuity unit, which was specifically, we were trying to get to just homeless calls. We've had a fast response vehicle, which we termed, which was roaming the city, trying to jump calls. And so, I don't need to tell you, Santa Monica is a unique place with the homeless challenge, with some of the traffic challenges, with some of the basic layout of the city, where our stations are at. So we are constantly looking at ways to be more effective. We are looking at, we're part of the SAMO-STAT process, which is really trying to evaluate ways to be more effective. And when we find ways that are more effective, put more resources towards that. If we find things that aren't working, change course. And so we're in the midst of that process. Quite frankly, our number one goal is still to make sure that we're taking on the overall challenge faced by the fire service in this city and being as effective as we can be. So we're looking at right now taking a dedicated resource that's not an existing resource for response and getting that inserted along with one of the help teams or with the police officer, potentially maybe one of the a nurse or a mental health practitioner, so that we can show up and stay on scene a little longer and be a little bit more effective. We have representation on every one of the homeless committees within the city, participate in all those, and are part of this process to find ways to get better. And quite frankly, it's a challenge for us. But like I said, we continue to participate. We're getting better with our statistics. We've had some changes just recently in our software programs that we use so we can better identify where the calls are, who we're running into multiple times, and share that information across the city. One of the challenges for us is that we're highly regulated from the local emergency medical services agency. And so if we pull up on any patient, whether they're homeless or not, our only choices are to either release them if they're qualified for release or take them to the emergency room. We legally can't take them to a sober center or a mental health facility. There's legislation that was trying to get passed on that to allow us to do that. Has not been passed at this point. So there's some challenges for us. And that's a little bit frustrating for us. Our options are limited because I think you would agree for a lot of these homeless type calls, unless it's an acute medical situation, the emergency room and a paramedic taking them there is not really what they need. So our role is we get out to these calls a lot. I'm really proud of our fire department and how we interface with homeless when we encounter them. We've got some good relationships out there. We know a lot of the frequent flyers, so we have access to them. And we're looking to build our strategy to be more helpful to resolve some of the issues for the long term than just showing up and transporting into ER, which has been our challenge up to this point. So I look forward to answering any questions you have as we get to the question and answer part.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, and thanks again, Kathleen and DTSM, for organizing this, and Patty in the library for hosting us. I'm Brian Hardgrave with the city's Human Services Division. The city has a comprehensive strategy to address homelessness, and I'm going to focus on a very narrow part of that this morning, talking about outreach, defining what outreach is and what it isn't, and the different forms that it takes. Elisa mentioned that the LA County homeless count results were released last week, and while we're encouraged to see a slight decrease, we're aware that there are still far more people unsheltered than there are in shelters. So what we're seeing and feeling are more and more people who are out there chronically homeless, suffering from complex medical, mental health, and psychiatric issues. So one strategy the city has long invested in and has renewed its investment is in the idea of multidisciplinary teams. We're talking about nurses, psychiatrists, clinical social workers, people with substance abuse backgrounds, and folks with lived homeless experience themselves who can go out and literally meet people where they're at and provide a level of care on the streets. Services that were normally reserved in clinics or access centers, we're taking those professional skilled services and delivering them in the community, helping to manage behavior and get people connected on a housing plan of their own. Did anybody grab this chart outlining the different outreach resources on your way in? So as you can see, that there's a variety of outreach and engagement, case management, and then the multidisciplinary teams. We have Zach Coyle from the People Concerned. Zach, go ahead and give a wave. Zach oversees 2 of the city-funded multidisciplinary teams in Santa Monica. The first is the Homeless Multidisciplinary Street Team that focuses on serving and housing the highest utilizers of police and fire services, like the Chief spoke about earlier. The second team that Zach supervises is the C3 team, which is a dedicated multidisciplinary team for the downtown Santa Monica area. His team goes out 5 days a week to engage people, build trust and rapport, help them get moving on a housing plan, and delivers that street-based medical and mental health and behavioral health care. There's also teams out here from St. Joseph Center that are county funded through Measure H and through the VA and Department of Mental Health. But the long story short here is there are teams 5 days a week throughout the city, but many in the downtown area who are working diligently to get to know the people out on the streets, manage their behavior, get them connected to the right set of supportive services and housing plans. It's my honor now to bring up Nick to talk a little bit more about another type of outreach team, the DTSM ambassadors, who really know a lot of the people that we're talking about and work well to integrate them into the continuum of care.
Thank you, Brian. I have a presentation, so we're just going to turn that on right now. Came prepared with a couple visual aids that we'd like to fedora hats. This first slide is just a very general overview of the type of services that they offer. Pedestrian assist, vehicle assist, they'll even jumpstart your car in the parking structure if it needs a jumpstart. They monitor public restrooms, including in Tongva Park and the restroom in parking structure 4, soon to be also public restroom and parking structure number 5. They provide a lot of maintenance services. They even enter maintenance requests, which are routed through our office that go directly to these appropriate city divisions. I think I was just looking at the stats this morning. They've routed already over 270 maintenance requests in the downtown area alone this year. For the purpose of this conversation, we're going to hone in on the 4th bullet point, which is quality of life issues. Much of what our ambassadors do is very public facing. It happens out on the street, assisting a pedestrian, picking up a piece of debris. When it comes to quality of life issues, actually a lot of the hard work they do happens sort of behind the scenes. So we're going to peek behind that curtain and kind of look at what that looks like. It all begins with training. They are trained in engagement techniques and also de-escalation techniques. A couple of them have also undergone some mental health first aid training, and I believe we're going to make that a mandatory part of our training program moving into the future. They assist with antisocial behavior out on the street, things like aggressive panhandling. And what this looks like is, should probably backtrack for a second and talk about how our ambassadors track all of their interactions. Each one carries a handheld iPhone device, which is hooked up to a system, a statistics system called our SMART system. And when we deal with chronic offenders that we see out on the street, sort of our frequent flyers is a word I've heard that I like. We create a profile for these individuals and we track our interactions with them. And our collaboration with the city comes into play when we meet with various city divisions, including the city's help team, and we sort of share this list of our frequent flyers in the downtown, things that we've seen them do, places that we see them hang out most often, and it's through this collaborative effort with the city that we've been able to, gain a little bit of traction in the downtown area. Peeking into our smart system, for our frequent flyers in the downtown, we create a profile for them. When we know their name, we use their name. When we don't know their name, we create an alias for them. There's an example on the left side of one of our frequent flyers who was around the downtown for a long time. His name was Ephraim. He's a great example. He's no longer in the downtown, so I feel comfortable using him as a little bit of a case study of how our ambassadors collaborate with the city on homeless issues. He was a chronic, we saw him around the downtown for years. His physical health started deteriorating right in front of our faces. We were able to connect. We were able to realize that he was actually connected to services through our bi-weekly meetings with the help team. And eventually our ambassadors actually contacted his clinicians that were looking for him actively, and he was able to be helped off the street through that way. So that's an example of how we use our smart system and collaborate with the city on those sort of efforts. This is just an example of the types of stats that our ambassadors keep track of out on the street related to quality of life interactions. This is for the downtown district itself. Our ambassadors carry around social service referral pamphlets. If they engage with an individual on the street who mentions that he or she is interested in some sort of social service program, they will hand them out pamphlets and information on local services. We request police assistance and fire assistance when necessary. We do the same thing in the parks, and our stats in the parks look a little bit different. The dynamic in the parks is a little bit different than it is in the downtown area. We clean up biohazard needles, and a lot of the homeless count I should mention. Our ambassadors on Wednesdays just do a basic homeless count of individuals in Tongva Park and Palisades Park. That is what that statistic looks like for this calendar year. So a lot of what they do is pretty proactive, but our ambassadors react reactively to certain things. If you are a local business owner or property owner and you notice there's some encampment debris left over in your alleyway or your doorway, our ambassadors provide on-demand trash removal. They have spot pressure washers that they can use. A lot of them are mobile. They're actually on a tricycle, so they can bike out to where your property is and do a spot pressure wash. And our ambassadors also have these notices in their possession. Property owners are encouraged to register for the sit or no sitting, no lying ordinance through the city. Once that happens, our ambassadors will go out to you and they'll give you one of these stickers to put in your doorway to help enforce this municipal code. And if any one of your employees, or if you're if you're just a citizen, an employee of a store, a local, anybody out in the downtown area, if you feel unsafe at night and need an escort to your car or to your place of work or to your home, our ambassadors provide that service as well. If you're walking out of the Apple store with a brand new laptop and you don't feel comfortable walking alone to your apartment or to your car, they can provide an escort service for you as well. And that's a little hard to read, but that is our contact information. I hope you picked up a flyer on the front table. All this information is listed there. These are the hours of our hospitality team. We also have an overnight maintenance team who is there to help, so somebody will pick up the phone 24 hours a day if you call that number. Which is 310-877-7731. It is on one of the pieces of literature on the front table. I encourage you to grab that on your way out if you did not grab one on your way in. And with that, I'd like to welcome Aaron Taylor up to the podium.
Good morning. issue, so thanks for coming out today. My name is Erin Taylor. I'm on the communications team for the city, and I just wanted to share a couple of resources that exist today that you can go to, or resources that are on the horizon that you can look forward to over the next couple of months around this important issue. So the first, a couple of resources, and hopefully most of you have seen these, but if you haven't, will be outside at the end of the presentation where you can grab and connect with us and grab some more resources. So the first resource I want to share is just a comprehensive update around homelessness that we shared with the community in February, and that was via the community newsletter Seascape. And this particular resource recapped the council's new investments on the issue, an overview of, what is causing homelessness, answering some of those key questions, an overview of some of the nonprofits working on homelessness every day, who to call, who to connect with, who to call to advocate on this important topic as well. So that was the February edition of Seascape, and we've brought copies just in case you haven't seen it. It's a good background piece, I would call, to sort of understand what's happening here in Santa Monica. Later this spring, we provided a practical toolkit about homelessness. We had heard from the community, what do I say? What do I do? Answering some of these key questions that people have. So I consider this sort of a one-stop shop. It's sort of a one-stop shop in terms of who to call, what to say, what to do. If you're ready and interested to volunteer or donate on the topic, there's also some opportunities in here as well. And we have these with us today, and will also be shared with 60,000 Santa Monica addresses right now. So it will be arriving at every house in Seascape for the June edition. So just wanted you to know that there's a pretty wide distribution about to happen. And also if you have, staff members or other people that might benefit from having these, please let us know, because we're happy to get as many as we can in your hands, and it's available digitally as well. Page 8 in the toolkit is an important page, because I had heard preparing for this meeting that people are really wondering, what's the emergency number? What's the non-emergency number? Where do I go to ask a question about the topic? So page 8 in the resource says contact the experts. And of course, 911 to report medical emergencies or if you feel safe in any way. The non-emergency police dispatch number is included as well. And then Santa Monica also has an app, and you can just search for Santa Monica Works in the App Store and get an app for the city so that you could put in a question or submit a question and get a response, and it will be routed to the right department across the city. Maybe you're not sure who to call about a particular question, or you have a service request. That is another way to do that through the Santa Monica app. So you just search Santa Monica Works in the App Store, and I can show it to you. I have it on my phone afterwards if you want to kind of see what it looks like and how to submit. The one thing I'm definitely hearing from connecting with downtown Santa Monica is that you're looking for something even simpler than the toolkit. So this is a pretty long resource, and it answers all the questions and tells you who to call and what to say and what's going on. But it's a pretty long piece. So we're working on a shorter piece for specifically, servers or particular people who are working in Santa Monica that maybe just need like one card of information. So we'll work on a shortened piece for this and definitely distribute it out through this network and other networks if that's something that you're looking for. A couple of other resources that are on the horizon is a comprehensive training resource that is currently in the works, and this will be in video format where individuals, whether you're a resident, you're a business owner, lots of different roles that people play in Santa Monica, you'll be able to connect with a video resource that shares, about homelessness strategies that are happening, and it also trains people on how to more effectively interact with homeless individuals. And this should be available in a video format. We're working on this currently. We have a pretty strong outline, but haven't produced the videos quite yet. And we expect this to be available in the fall. And Brian and Maggie are some of the key people on this if you want to talk with them about that afterwards. The last piece I'll share is that we are also working, some folks are kind of, who do I call and what do I say? And they're in that stage. And then other people are like, I really want to support individuals. I want to help on this issue right here in Santa Monica. So one of the things that we are working on in partnership with the Homeless Steering Committee is identifying the volunteer and donation opportunities that local nonprofits have right now, working on this topic right now. So this summer you can expect kind of a second resource. It will be yellow, and it will define those sort of volunteer and donation opportunities for organizations working on on this topic right here in Santa Monica. So if that's something of interest, you can definitely watch out for that. All of this work, whether it's the toolkit pieces or these future volunteer donation opportunities, all of them are presented under the umbrella of We Are Santa Monica. And it's really an initiative of the city that invites all of us, whether you're a business owner, a resident, whether you're a nonprofit provider, a healthcare employee, anyone who's in Santa Monica, to join together and work together on these important issues in our community. So you'll see all of that presented under this We Are Santa Monica umbrella. And we'll have more information actually outside, right outside the door as you head out. You can grab a couple pieces like the toolkit, like the seascape, and learn more. So with that, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for coming out today. And I think I'll pass it over to Kathleen.
Back to me. Well done. All right, thanks everyone. So anybody who spoke should come up, and because the best part of a town hall is Q&A. Okay, so while they're doing that, I just wanted to mention, Erin did mention Homeless Steering Committee. I have the privilege of co-chairing that with John Masseri and Bill Parent, and it is a community-wide effort to address homelessness from all different angles. So I'm very proud to serve on that committee with my colleagues. And public information about that is available on the city's website when those meetings happen. So people are very much engaged with this. Also, I know Rick Cole's on the agenda next, but he wants to speak at the end, so that's what we're going to do. Again, we are live streaming, so that means I will recognize all of you who have questions or comments, but please wait to get the mic. And remember, there's a lot of people in the room, so try and be succinct, okay? And be nice to each other, everybody. So thank you. Well done. Look at that. All right. So also, if you are a member of my board of directors, will you raise your hand, please? This is a dedicated group of volunteers at downtown Santa Monica. Give them a round of applause. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, who has the guest mic? Ben. This is Ben. Who would like to speak? Raise your hand. Sir.
For all the money that we're spending, and all the cities that are spending a lot of money on homeless, I think it's a big issue, or our money could be more well spent if the state would get involved, if the state universities would get involved as an adjunct. They do such a good job on housing, all that's necessary. I wish there was a state representative here, but I don't think there is. But if you want to forward that idea to state representatives, to state university as adjuncts to their system, and if there isn't room on the system to provide on state land or purchase state land for homeless educational rehabilitation center, where if we're dealing with it in the city, they have some place to go, because this is beyond what we can do here in most of our cities in the state. I know it's up and down the state.
We totally agree with you. And right now, in the moment of time, it's working its way through some of the budget surplus at the state level. So now it's actually a good time to advocate with Senator Ben Allen and also Assemblymember Bloom to support the homeless initiative. And we will make sure we get the exact bill or budget proposal as it comes out. There's 3 proposals: the budget, the governor's budget, the Senate bill, and Assembly bill. So we're waiting to see which one comes out. But we're hoping it will dedicate about $1.5 billion statewide. And quickly, there's also a research institute. So Berkeley and UCLA have partnered together to create a research think tank specifically on homelessness. So we will be sure we share your idea back with them.
Great. Next question, Maria. Can you hear this? Not really. No.
As I'm sitting here, a thought came to my mind. I don't know exactly what Semoshel, how much land does it have? Anybody knows? What is the footprint of Semoshel next to Schwaschlach? Nobody knows? But it's right next to the bus stop. And I was thinking that this is one place that we could build a 6 or 7 story high building to house some of our homeless and provide services. I don't know what the interim time would take, but this is one piece of land that could be used to create homeless housing right there.
Thank you. Alan.
Thank you. A question for the chief. Hi and welcome. I haven't met you personally yet, but I hope to soon. I'm a Rec and Parks commissioner. Just before you came, and I understand it's going to be continuing, your mobile command unit was at Reed Park, and then I believe in another couple of locations. I thought that was extraordinary, having your officers there very visibly in a community, especially in a hot spot. And I'm wondering if there's a schedule for that. And I also wonder, what are your plans to get officers out of the cars and perhaps using their feet to move around our community more, so they can be more open and more accessible?
Great questions, great points. The first deployment of Optimus Crime actually occurred when I was already here as a chief. It was my idea. I take full credit for it. Yeah, it had nothing to do with me. It came out of community affairs and the team that you see standing along the back wall. It was their idea. And really what that idea was about streamlining our resources. We didn't put extra people in the field that day. What we did was we took the people who were already working that needed to work from somewhere, and the units that were going to be deployed that day anyway, and we just deployed them out of that mobile command unit. It was a great idea. With that said, it still did take time and resources for us to get together. That mobile command unit is a beast to drive. Somebody has to go pick it up, bring it out, set it up. So there was some labor involved, and we can't do it every day. But we are starting to look at doing it at about once a month. The schedule is very organic. And Sergeant Villegas, have you picked the next location yet?
Not quite yet. We're getting ideas right now.
Okay. So soliciting input along with looking at crime trends and patterns and where activities are happening to put that out again. So we'll continue to do that. And then your next question about getting officers engaged in the community, visible in the community. For the first priority, well, all three of the outcome priorities that I talked about, that's an important piece to accomplishing those. So we've done a couple of internal tweaks recently, and one has to do with traffic collisions. So traffic collisions take time for an officer to respond and take that paperwork. We have a motor unit that is also spread thin, doing a host of things, but we've put an internal process in place just recently so that traffic collisions will now primarily be handled by either motor officers, community service officers, with patrol as the last layer. There are also some other processes and state mandates that we're responsible for that take a lot of time out of patrol, such as child abuse reports, for an example. And we're looking at how we can take those responsibilities, shift them into other parts of the organization with the emphasis on relieving patrol of some of those duties so that they can do exactly what you talked about. Not only drive slowly up and down streets with windows down and hands waving, but get out and walk when they can. And we have great bicycle patrols. They're still the same guys that field calls for service units. So to the extent that we can streamline some of these other responsibilities that we have to do to get them to your point of out, visible, and walking, that's what we're working on now.
Thank you. Barbara? Ben? Oh, was there one back there too? Okay, her and then you.
Excuse me.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm with Assemblymember Bloom's office. And to your point, Ms. Orduna, that yes, what you need to do is call Senator Ben Allen's office, call our office, Assemblymember Bloom's office, and voice your opinions, your support for these bills, because the more they come in, the more attention is paid to them. So please call us. That's what we're there for. That's your tax dollars at work. And if you have any questions on these bills, we're also available for that. And I'll be here for the duration of the meeting. And if anybody wants a business card to follow up, I'll be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Barbara, right here in front.
Hi, so I had two questions. Nick, you showed a picture of that lady, or man, I don't know, that was sitting on the promenade. I was just wondering if that person didn't want to move, how do you get them to move? And the other question is, when I moved here in the 70s, Camarillo was open, and then it closed, and there's a lot of land there, and for the state, like the gentleman was talking about, what happened to that land, and is that a possibility where people could build homeless housing in Camarillo?
So I'll take the first part of that question. I'm not going to be able to really speak to Camarillo or any of the state mental hospitals. So the woman that you saw on the screen, we'll call her Miss W. I know exactly who she is. We've been dealing with her for years. We have a lot of those folks that are, we kind of call them anchors. They've been in the community for many years. A lot of them are our priority population. So were either became homeless in Santa Monica or they've been homeless in Santa Monica for many, many, many years. Generally speaking, they know the rules about where they can be and when. And when they're in public places, when they're open, they're allowed to be in those public places, even though they may be covered up in a blanket and it's obvious they're not moving, they're not buying anything. They become a fixture at the fountain on, at 3rd and Broadway. There's no legal way for us to have them move along. So, and we understand that. So what we try and do, and this is something that my team, the help team, does, is go out and try and engage with her. Over and over and over again, we work with our HSD partners, our Department of Mental Health clinicians, to go out and figure out why they've become an anchor and see if they've been taken in, like if they have services in other parts of the county, or they have a social worker, and try and get them into the system if they're not already. And those are the ways that we're able to deal with someone like that. And eventually, down the line, we hope that we're able to come to some kind of a long-term solution that will get her off the street. Part of the big issue with that is everybody, wants something done now. And in the case of someone who's not hurting anyone, that they're following the law, that they're in a public space, the answer is more of a compassionate answer, which is something that the police and our partners that we're able to go out and provide, along with Zach and his teams, and there they are out in the field. So that's how we address something like that.
And I would add on that is that one of the clear characteristics of the Santa Monica approach and the multidisciplinary team approach is whatever it takes, wherever it's at, as long as it takes. And so these teams have been engaging specific individuals who are anchored in the community, some pictured, some not pictured, going back time and time again, making sure that their presence is felt, making sure their offers for services and housing are felt, knowing that it takes time to build trust, and that when that person sees them again, it might be a moment to move their situation forward just ever that much. There are challenges at the countywide and statewide system in terms of protecting people's civil liberties versus when you believe somebody needs involuntary psychiatric treatment, how we can actually get that out to them is pretty difficult. But it doesn't mean the team stops trying. I can say for the teams that are working with specific individuals, they go back time and time again, sometimes over a period of years, waiting for that opportunity.
Where are the 400 interim beds that you had mentioned earlier? And also, what's the utilization rate on those?
So we're the 400 beds and the utilization rate. The 400 beds are spread across our organizations, mainly the People Concerned, which again is formerly OPCC, also Upward Bound House, and I'm forgetting one. Upward Bound, People Concerned, and Step Up. And then also Claire is the other one. The utilization rates, I'll have to get that for you.
And again, one of the characteristics is that we don't have a first come, first serve model, is that we reserve these beds that are in short supply for the individuals who really are the most vulnerable and who need it the most. So, and we saw in a webinar with the National Alliance on Ending Homelessness yesterday that the shift is really going away from let's have these beds fully utilized every night versus the people who are the most sick and at the most need. We need to reserve these beds so when they need a place to stay that they can move into it. So I remember from the 2018 count, I think about 95% of our beds were assigned. Now, I think the utilization for that night, at that point in time, was slightly less because people were out and about. But those beds are reserved for the people who need them the most.
I had one answer to Barbara. The former Camarillo Mental Health Institute is now UC Channel Islands. They converted it into it's a university. Yeah, yeah. I had one comment too, and I'm not really sure, but just for the good of the public too. One of the things that we're finding, I manage Santa Monica Place, and one of the things we're finding is we have a lot more of the mentally ill homelessness that are coming, and people are carrying weapons. More often now, and so it's just a matter of making sure too, as far as to stay safe, is if engaging others, is to keep a distance, because obviously, I mean, it makes sense, they're trying to protect themselves too, and so there's a challenge there. I don't know if there's any suggestions from the chief on how best to handle that from a retail standpoint, a manager, or they go into the stores or things like that, or there's a lot of the people that are dealing with this on the promenade, or just as a person walking by, that could give us some good warnings on how to handle those situations.
So a little bit of advice on what citizens should do when they encounter somebody that they think is agitated. Okay. So first of all, don't engage the person. Give them a wide path, walk around them if possible. Definitely call the non-emergency number to dispatch to report the agitated behavior with as much description as you possibly can. So being agitated in and of itself is not a crime, but to call dispatch and say, this person is agitated, they're flailing their arms around. I saw them almost hit somebody who was walking by because they were upset and agitated. Some detail for dispatch for the officers responding. Talking in a calm voice, just, as I said, trying not to engage as you move past, and being aware of your own personal space and maintaining that safe personal space as you do, and then calling police department immediately at the non-emergency line.
Hello. Hi, my name is Sparky. I've been homeless for 5 years. I've traveled around the country. And, one of the things that kind of perplexes me is, why is homelessness not a national disaster? Because if that would be the case, FEMA would be in here with an organization set up an encampment 24/7 that would supply everybody, from everything. I was in Katrina, and FEMA came in and individual organizations came in and set up encampments that literally had everything that nobody ever had to leave. We had laundry facilities, showers, food, and we had reefer trucks. Not necessarily, and God bless everybody, and we appreciate it, but bologna and cheese sandwiches get old after a while, and they're really not nourishing with the bag of Doritos. So we need better quality, The other side, so is, why can't we all just get together and kind of maybe by the airport where there's land, where you're closing down or something, I don't know. But anyway, find some property or some land and let's open up an encampment where everybody can go, including residents. If they're older or whatever and they don't have the food or availability, let them come out there. You've got computers. We can put TVs out there, games, activities for the homeless people, as well as the community. That's my thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Sparky.
I mean, that's actually a question.
So I wasn't sure if it was a comment or a question. I would say that goes to some of our regional strategy, which is why we're supporting the city of Los Angeles. Part of a bridge home is to create 600 new alternative spaces, call them shelter, interim housing, or different designs that they're experimenting with, trailers or I don't know, small homes, et cetera, that they're looking at. And I think that's part of the regional response is that they are starting to look creatively, and that we need other cities like LA in particular, but other cities to also step up as well. And then we can learn from it and give people choices and alternatives.
You see, as opposed to having everything and everybody, spread out, if you were to have a facility that was kind of like out of the way, kind of like everybody went over there and they hung out over there wouldn't be anything in the city. I mean, it would be clean, it would,
Yeah. Well, that's the goal. The Bridge Home is modeled after the Navigation Center up in San Francisco. And the goal is they're looking at where are people naturally encamping, and they're going to be targeting those specific encampments to move everyone in as that community that they form together. So the first will be El Pueblo, and we'll be able to see how it goes from there.
So just a reminder, keep your comments succinct, and you have to use the mic because of the live stream. Okay, so follow-up questions should also have the mic.
Hi. I'm from the King's Head, and we have a lot of incidents every single day. And we keep an incident book, and we're trying to, my owner wants to publish that book. So my question is, can we access your smart system and contribute photos and incidents that happen as they happen?
Do you want to answer, Nick?
As far as outside access to our smart system, I'm not sure if that's possible at this time because it does need to be accessed through an ambassador's handheld device. That being said, we would be more than happy to meet with you and go over these interactions in person with some of our ambassadors present, and then maybe sort of collaborate on a best effort from there. So I encourage you to reach out to us at any time and set up that meeting.
Also, we have set up meetings with different businesses that are experiencing a high level of issues with the police department and with other support folks. So we're very happy to do that with the King's Head. Ellen, did you want to go next? And then, Alan, then Ellen. Sorry, I didn't enunciate.
To the gentleman's point behind me about shelter, the libraries are overwhelmed during the day, just as are the parks with people, because essentially they don't have a safe place to go at night. And they're wandering around. If you wonder why they're carrying weapons, it's for their own self-protection. And some of them aren't mentally challenged to have those. And so I tend to go with that point. We're hearing a lot today about the sticks, so to speak, but we're not hearing much about how do we entice people with carrots out to places where they can be safe at night, where they can access services at night in Santa Monica, okay? And there are plenty of land opportunities for that, whether they're at the airport or closer to town. And so my question is, what are we doing to really change the policy about providing on-demand housing? And we'd really like to see that so that the people don't feel like they have to sleep all day in the park because they've been up wandering around like ghouls all night.
So my first immediate answer, what you can do today, is really educate people that are experiencing homeless in your neighborhood, who you talk to. Let them know about our multidisciplinary teams and know that there's people out on the street that it's safe for them to engage with. I know sometimes, if I just walked up to someone, they're not going to know me from a can of paint. But if we build that relationship and say there are services are available through St. Joseph Center or OPCC, we can make that connection. More long-term, what we didn't mention, but I think Nick, actually you mentioned it, or Brian, there is the Homeless Steering Committee, and there are subcommittees that are taking a more in-depth look. I know. And so I hope you're promoting your open spaces. Yeah, and I think, there's going to be neighborhood pushback. And I think once we start educating people about the various alternatives and we start hearing this is something the community wants, is definitely something we could look into. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I do have to say, though, I think it's significant and it's not to put other cities on blast, so to speak, but Santa Monica has stepped up for a long time. The fact that our unsheltered population is around 600 and we have 400 shelter beds is huge. Is it enough? No. Do we know the utilization rate? We're not quite sure, but there's capacity locally. There isn't capacity in other communities where people have always said, oh, just go to Santa Monica. And so that's why we have to look at this as a regional issue, and particularly what's so important is someone may be here right now because it's safe for them, but their family or other services may be in another community. Remember, 46% aren't from Santa Monica. They're just coming here because there are some services available. We need to really work with those cities to build their capacity. We need each of you to go and talk to their city council members or other neighborhood organizations and say, look at Santa Monica. We've done this. We can walk you through this process. So that way people have choices and they don't have to leave their natural organic support systems in order to come for services.
Ellen Brennan, then Eric Sedman, and then the gentleman in the pink, red rose.
Hello, I'm a long-term neighbor, and I'm with Santa Monica Mid-City Neighbors. And I remember just a few years ago, you managed to get rid of Lipstick Mary and the one-eyed blind guy who hung out in front of the 7-Eleven and the bearded lady. So I don't know what your police department did, but they were around for years and years and years and wouldn't go anywhere, and all of a sudden they were gone. And I'm kind of worried about, what did you do with those folks? Because now you're saying you can't get rid of long-term homeless. And I'm concerned about Reed Park. I'd like to see those park rangers there every single day, full time. The parents who are taking their little kids there are worried. They're there with their nannies during the day. I'm afraid to walk through the park at times. And so I have really seen a deterioration just in the last year. And it really concerns me quite a bit. And I'd like to see a lot more step up. And we've asked St. John's and UCLA, Mid-City Neighbors have asked them to increase their bed service of some type, and they've refused to even listen to us for long-term mental health use. And for the members of our community, not just the homeless, we need more mental health services.
So a few of the folks, well, so at least one of them is housed permanently, that I know for sure. I'm not sure about Lipstick Mary, although I am familiar with her from my early years on patrol. I did see her out with her bags. So those are examples of what we're trying to do with the multidisciplinary collaboration that you've been hearing about today, bringing in the police department and human services and Department of Mental Health, and using all of the systems that we have available to us in our area. So whether it's the criminal justice system, enforcing quality of life violations, things like camping and some of our public nuisance violations, things like that. So using the criminal justice system to some extent to get people into services and working with social workers in the county. Occasionally it's trying to break the cycle of homelessness by getting them housed, whether it's we can do 72-hour holds, working with our court system, things like that, to be able to open up as many doors as possible to these folks. And eventually they're either kind of pushed in a direction because they either are found to be incapable of making their own decisions for themselves, or we're dealing with long-term criminal issues, or we're able to get them connected back with family or some kind of a housing arrangement. Those are the kinds of things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis that require years worth of effort, but it's worth the effort, because at the end of the day, we are getting these folks housed, we're getting them clean, we're getting them off the streets, and by clean I mean off drugs. We're getting them off the streets, and we're creating those long-term solutions. It's just the frustration, I think, of seeing them, you're seeing them every single day and not thinking that anything's going on, and yet in the background, I can say for sure that you've got folks in the city and within our social services providers that are working on a daily basis to make sure that those doors are opening for them, because it's virtually impossible to get them open, but we're willing to do it in order to get them off the street. So I can't really speak specifically about individuals, but one of the things that I've been learning over the last 8 or so months that I've been in charge of the help team are getting some of these stories with the help team working with HSD and social services providers, seeing before and after pictures of these folks that right now may be brand new to our parks, but they're being contacted, and each of those contacts, whether it's with the police department or say a C3 team going out into the field, all those contacts are being pulled together, and we're going to be able to funnel these folks faster into a permanent solution. Does that answer your question at all? Not really. At least it provides some background.
I wanted to just say your question highlights what the city's hung our hat on for a long time, is that how much this community cares by name in creating our service registry and pouring resources into the most visible chronic homeless individuals in our community and caring what happens to them and making sure they get linked to supportive services and housing. I want to take this opportunity to share a brief success story of somebody who had been arrested by the police department 15 or 20 times, had been engaged by one of the outreach and engagement teams on that chart, but didn't want anything to do with our services, or the dirty word in social services. They're service resistant, but through persistent outreach, both between law enforcement, who has limited tools in their arsenal, and through the outreach teams, this person was actually visited in jail by the people concerned, was linked to substance abuse treatment, mental health counseling, interim housing at Turning Point. He got himself clean from drugs and alcohol, got all of his court cases handled through homeless court. He's now got a permanent housing voucher with the Santa Monica Housing Authority. He's looking for his own apartment, and he recently worked at the NBA All-Star Game in LA earlier in February. So not every success story, or not every story ends with that kind of success, but it shows that this is somebody who probably had a very different looking future 6 to 12 months ago, and through the repetitive engagement and coordination between police, fire, human services, and our nonprofit partners, now he's got a job, he's got a home, and he's got a future.
Thank you. Sorry, Eric. So we're going to take about 2 more questions and then let the city manager speak, and we will be hovering around here afterwards for individual questions.
Thank you very much for this town hall forum. I think it's been very, very informative, and I do understand and realize there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we who are walking up and down the business district area aren't necessarily aware of, so I really appreciate that. This question is really going to be directed more towards Chief Renaud and Chief Walker, and it's one of informative basis. What I'd really like to know is, I know there's legal limitations with regard to what situations you can address, what incidents you can address. So what I'd like to know is if both of you would give examples of incidents that you've had calls out on that you're really unable to address, that really should be referred to different agencies, and if that's the case, which agencies should they be referred to? Because obviously we're wasting valuable resources in police and fire if you're getting calls out to incidents that you're not able to deal with. Second of all, what I'd like to know is from fire and police, what type of incidents should be directed to fire and specifically to police? And if that information has been communicated to the public in a way that we can stop wasting valuable time.
I'll try and start that. So specifically to incidents that we go out on that are a challenge. One, if we go out on someone similar to the PD being able to move somebody that wants to stay in a certain spot, if we show up, you have the right to refuse care if you're basically oriented and know what's going on around you. So we can't, I mean, maybe it's an extreme term, but we can't kidnap you and take you to the hospital. Our limitations are we can release you or we can take you to the ER. We have nowhere in between. So we work on educating all of our firefighters to be able to provide information about the help team, about resources, about services. But the challenge for us is through the dispatch process. We get calls we have to group calls, because when someone calls, hey, I've got a person down, and there's a large category man down. And so we both get that call. PD's response is different from fire. We go code 3 to every call and get there quickly, because the challenge for us is we are trying to group all the calls that are for a person down, and sometimes that person's down and not breathing, sometimes that person's down taking a nap. And so it's very challenging, and we always default to what could be the greatest problem. And so we end up on a lot of calls where we overshoot it. So in the structure of the fire department, we have our 4-person paramedic engine, which currently is really the backbone of our system. And that is, for us, it's kind of our ultimate Swiss Army knife. We can show up to almost any call and handle it. We have all the ALS capabilities. We have 4 people. We have the resources to handle a difficult patient or a challenging situation, from a full arrest to a minor call. So we we show up with a lot of resources to make sure we can handle the worst possible case, and that rarely happens. That's the small percentage. And the majority of the time we're there with someone who either has wandered off and there's nobody there, or is sleeping, or has a very minor complaint. And that's kind of the challenge. We're built that way, but we need a longer engagement. And so that's the system we're trying to get embedded with the help teams, and or have a response that can jump that call, another resource, and then spend more time on scene to resolve it. You're absolutely right. We end up on a lot of calls we don't want to be on. I can tell you, the city manager talks to me about that all the time. How do we fix that? How do we get smarter with it? It's very challenging, and we don't have OEM here, but city manager's office, which is in charge, the dispatch center for both police and fire, it's very challenging for them to parse the information coming in quickly and say, hey, oh, no, we really don't need a whole fire engine and a police officer. We don't send the help team. We send everybody. We send the whole cavalry to always default, because we don't want to show up with not enough. And so it's a challenge we're trying to get better at, trying to use technology and education through our dispatchers and the questioning process, but it's a challenge for us, and we don't have a great fix for it right now, because we don't want to miss. We don't want to show up to something that sounded like not a big deal. We didn't have enough people and then fall short.
So just quickly, so the question then relates to these calls that you're getting.
Yeah.
Typically, it's not the person who's laying on the ground that's calling you. It's somebody from the public that's calling you. So what about outreach to the public to help the public identify who should be called?
Excellent point, and I think that's something we try and do. We have alternatives to 911, but we'll work harder on that. But it's a challenge, because you're exactly right. People drive by. I saw someone laying on the ground. They appear, out or unconscious, and to us that goes right to the code 3 of the whole team. So you are correct, and it's something we can maybe work on some of our outreach materials on how to do that. But when that call comes in, if you just drove by and you have limited information, we tend to default to not knowing.
So a couple of thoughts first. There's no doubt I'm your law enforcement agency. I enforce the penal code, the vehicle code, municipal codes, and address infractions. And it's all about crime, really. And being homeless in and of itself is not a crime. With that said, when I got hired 27 years ago, I was sitting in my police academy class, and they brought in this old-time copper who'd been on, getting ready to retire. And he talked to all of us about, he said, congratulations, and I hope you have all your baseball caps with you. And he talked about, you think you're getting hired as a police officer, and here's your cap of police officer. But 5 minutes after making an arrest, the next call, you need to put on your cap of mentoring a youth who might be going down the wrong path. And then the next cap is helping a married couple who's not getting along and it's resorting to violence. And the list of baseball caps go on. And so there's a very delicate balance here for us. And it's a balance that Santa Monica Police Department in particular, and speaking now, experience in 3 agencies, this is a balance that Santa Monica Police Department does very well with the help team and with the mental health clinicians that are embedded with us, and with how well we partner with all of our social service agencies to try and get help and aid and long-term solutions to these people. So to answer your question, first and foremost, when in doubt, you're going to call the non-emergency number to dispatch, because that's what citizens do, and that's what it's there for, and that's what we're there for. And I as much as I would love to educate people on triaging for us, to a certain extent, that's just not going to happen, and we know that, and we'll go out and assess to the best of our ability. And for us, when we get to those scenes, if there is a criminal action that has taken place, we will take criminal enforcement. And if not, then we try and apply this very robust process that we have here in Santa Monica to get the right people and the right resources out to them. It's not an easy fix. It is cumbersome. And if we have maybe 700 to 900 homeless people experiencing homelessness in Santa Monica, are we going to touch a small percentage of that and be effective in that? Yeah. But you can look at it and say there's a big portion we're missing, or you can look at it and say there's a portion that we are impacting, and then we continue to apply our standard tools to that majority population. Are they committing a crime? If yes, we will enforce that, and if not, we'll continue to apply services. And it's labor intensive, and it's exhausting, but that's what we have because we're dealing with people.
Yeah. Yeah. In just a second, thank you.
Go ahead.
Good morning. So this is the policy, SEAL Team 6 sitting on the stage today. So thank you. I congratulate you. This is the policy team. There is a symbiotic relationship between housing and homelessness. So I think this is a comment. We're here today for solutions, not happy talk. Thank you. Santa Monica has to put some skin in the game. Number one, let's adopt a program for accessory dwelling units that extend to not only residence homes, but apartment zoning as well. Our assembly person, Mr. Bloom, left that out of his bill in 2017. Then let's pony up $50,000 for each one of those owners that are going to build that unit, and we'll put some people in there that can barely afford it for maybe a 10-year deed restriction at a very low rent. Because you need to take people and put them in housing. That's a solution, and that's a solution I think is appropriate. And there's plenty of lots throughout the city. That's called a solution. So you have to go down to the city council. You have to put it on the agenda. You have to have the courage to stand up, whether you're in the fire department or law enforcement, and say, we need an enlightened, powerful, progressive, bare-knuckle, SEAL Team 6 approach to housing. And you'll find the one partner that'll stand with all of you are the apartment owners in this city. And they'll put those extra units in. Thank you. It's a comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So a round of applause for all the staff here, please. And I'd like to introduce Rick Cole. Do you want to, where are you going? Down here?
So this has been a very constructive, a very positive, a very informative, and a very polite discussion for which I think all of us are appreciative, because we know this is an emotional issue, and sometimes these discussions turn emotional, which is momentarily satisfying, but really not very constructive, positive, or informative. So thank you all for attending and for participating in a way that I think is positive, constructive, and informative. That said, no one underestimates the gravity of this crisis. It is genuinely a regional crisis. It really is a state and to some extent national crisis. It doesn't occur in every city in America, but in almost all of our larger cities, and particularly where the cost of housing is as high as it is in California. The paradox of this crisis is that it is massive in its scope, 57,000 people here in our county, and yet all of the solutions really are individual. That doesn't mean that we don't have policy solutions that work for more than one person. It doesn't mean that we don't work on macro issues like affordable housing. But it does mean that out on the street, we're dealing with Joe or Mary or Sam or Peter or John. We're dealing with individual people. One person has been out on the street 3 weeks because they got evicted because they had a medical emergency. Another person has been out on the street 15 years because they suffer from PTSD as a veteran and have substance abuse problems. And living out on the street for 15 years will make anyone have mental illness. So the solution for the person that's been out on the street 3 weeks and the solution for the person that's been out on 15 years is incredibly difficult, and it's kind of one at a time. That's why we need everyone in this room as a force multiplier. As proud as I am of the work we are doing and will continue to do with your support, everyone in this room is a force multiplier. So we have boiled it down to 3 things we're asking everyone to do. Pick 1, pick 2, pick 3. But it's very simple, and we need 93,000 residents, and we need 100,000 people who work in our city to participate in one of these 3 basic, fundamental challenges if we're going to make a difference in the magnitude of this crisis. The first is to volunteer. Volunteer at your church, volunteer at People's Concern, volunteer with DTSM, volunteer with your local neighborhood watch, volunteer in some way to understand and to contribute to this challenge. You can volunteer as an individual. There are people in this room who've taken into their lives people in need. And that, there's no institutional framework, but that's incredibly giving and incredibly important. But volunteering does 2 things. One, it actually chips away at this massive problem, one person at a time. But it also is humbling, because if you volunteer, you understand a lot better just how difficult it is to make a difference. It seems like, well, if they would just do this, this would all go away. And if you become they, if you become we, and you have to deal with some of these issues of a person with substance abuse, or a person with mental illness, or a person without a home, or a person that's 3,000 miles away from home, it's a very humbling experience, and you see that there is no simple overnight solution. So it makes a difference, but it also teaches us how challenging this is. The second is donate. Look, this is a very advantaged community. Not everyone in this community is advantaged, but we have a lot of resources. 100,000 people come into work every single day here. They work hard. They contribute tremendously to this community. They pay their taxes. But if everybody skipped 2 lattes in the next year, we could raise $1 million that could go directly to some of our social service agencies and make a huge difference at putting people to work, helping people get housing, helping them kick mental illness symptoms, helping them kick drugs and alcohol. $1 million, I guarantee you, would make a huge difference. And all it would mean is all of us skipping 2 lattes a year. So if you're not donating, please give to the causes of the people that are out there working to do that. The third is advocate. That's what you've done here. You've come, you've given some great suggestions, and I want to just take a moment as city manager to explain on election day a reality about democracy. Is we have 93,000 residents in this community and about 95,000 opinions about how to solve this problem. And that's a healthy thing, that's a natural thing, that's a normal thing, that's what makes democracy great. It's why it also is slow and frustrating. As Winston Churchill said, it's the absolute worst form of government ever invented by human beings, except for all the rest, right? Democracy means government by the people. So we can say, well, that's the state's problem or that's City Hall's problem. It's really our problem if we believe in democracy. So advocate. That means that put your voice through writing letters to the editor, coming to meetings like this, sitting down and having coffee with Richard Bloom or with your council member, sending an email to me, talking to some of these folks when we break here. Advocate. Advocate also to your neighbors, because every dollar that we're now spending on this issue came from some other service that someone else wanted, right? People want more libraries, more parks, more recreation programs, a soccer field. Every dollar we spend on homelessness is a political choice taken from something else that we could have spent that money on. So if you believe this is important, you need to be advocating for why it's important. But not just public dollars. You need to advocate for the kind of policy changes. There were some good suggestions. And here's the last piece of this. I think Elisa said it best. There are some things we are thinking about. There are some things that we could do. There are some challenges that the SEAL Team 6 could take on. But everybody talks about, well, if only there were political will, right? If only someone had the backbone to do that, the president, the mayor, the governor, if they would just do that. That's not how democracy works. Political will comes from us. So, and it's not just here in Santa Monica. Unless Culver City, unless City of Los Angeles, unless Malibu, unless West Hollywood, unless Torrance, unless Palos Verdes, unless Beverly Hills, unless some of these other communities also step up, this is going to be a problem we make worse by providing the solutions and bringing more people into Santa Monica because other people are turning their back. That's not a good solution. But we have to do our part. We've already done a lot. We need to do more, but the only way we'll do it is if there is the political will, and that comes from all of us in this room. So, volunteer, donate, and advocate. That's what my plea is to you. You're an incredible force multiplier. These folks and I get paid to do our work because of the generosity of the support of working in public service. We appreciate it. We try to earn every nickel of that for you by going the extra mile, particularly on a tough problem like this. But you're a force multiplier. 93,000 residents, 100,000 workers. That could make a huge difference in 700 lives. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, everyone, again. We will be around for one-on-one questions. And if you are not on our mailing list and you would like to be, please leave your information at the front, okay? Thanks again.